We turn now to a political shockwave out of Nova Scotia. 1 week ago, Conservative MP Chris walked across the floor of the House of Commons and joined Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government. It was more than a personal decision. It instantly tightened the math in Ottawa and turned one backbench MP from Acadianapolis into one of the most talked about politicians in the country. Let's break down what happened, why it happened, and why it matters far beyond one rural Atlantic riding. Chris d'Entremont is not a rookie. He spent more than a decade and a half in the Nova Scotia legislature as a progressive conservative, serving in cabinet, before jumping to federal politics in 2019. He built his brand as a classic Red Tory, socially moderate, fiscally cautious, and deeply rooted in his Acadian community on the southwest coast. In Ottawa, he won his federal seat twice under the Conservative banner. He rose high enough in the House of Commons to become Deputy Speaker, chairing debates and being trusted to manage tense moments on the floor. But 2025 changed the ground under his feet. When Parliament returned after the spring election, the Conservatives chose another MP, not d'Entremont, for the powerful Speaker's chair. Insiders say that snub hurt. He had put his name forward, but he didn't have the backing of his own caucus. At the same time, the party under Pierre Poilievre was moving in a more combative, populist direction. D'Entremont watched that shift from the inside and started to question whether he's still fit. In interviews since the floor crossing, he has described himself as increasingly uncomfortable with what he saw as a relentlessly negative approach to politics. He says it felt less like a serious party ready to govern, and more like what he bluntly called a frat house. According to d'Entremont, he was sometimes yelled at by colleagues and even called a snake when he raised concerns about tone and tactics. Then came Budget 2025. On the same day, the Carney government unveiled a high-spending economic plan. D'Entremont made his move. He informed Conservative leadership he was resigning from their caucus. He notified the Speaker, and he walked across the chamber to sit with the Liberals. His public statement framed the decision as the result of long conversations with his family and constituents. He said there was, quote, a better path forward for our country, and a better path forward for Acadianapolis, and that Mark Carney's budget was closer to what he had been hearing back home. He highlighted infrastructure, community investment, and economic stability as priorities that lined up with the new government's plan more than with his old party's stand. The timing was not accidental. The Liberals hold a minority. Every seat counts. With d'Entremont's defection, Carney moved one step closer to the magic number he needs for a majority. Analysts say the government is now just 2 seats away from being able to pass its budget and survive confidence votes without relying on other parties. For Mark Carney, this was a political and symbolic win. He appeared with d'Entremont, calling him exceptionally valuable and presenting the move as proof that his government's agenda can attract conservatives who are uncomfortable with Pierre Poilievre's style. For the Conservatives, it was a gut punch. They lost their only federal MP in Nova Scotia. They lost a deputy speaker-level figure who had been considered a safe, loyal presence. And they lost him not over a local scandal, but over his judgment of where the party as a whole is headed. The reaction from the Conservative camp was swift and angry. Some MPs accused d'Entremont of betrayal. One headline from his home province quoted a constituent calling him just another traitor. Conservative strategists argue that he won his riding under their banner and should have triggered a by-election instead of switching sides mid-mandate. They also accuse the Liberals of trying to buy a majority by dangling future roles or influence. D'Entremont insists That's not what happened. He says he was offered no cabinet job and no guaranteed promotion. That this was about values, tone, and what he sees as a more constructive approach to governing. Beyond the personal drama, there's a safety dimension. The backlash online was intense enough that the RCMP opened an investigation into threats directed at him after the announcement. That's become an increasingly familiar pattern in Canadian politics. A controversial decision, a wave of outrage, and then law enforcement stepping in to sort out where criticism ends and criminal threats begin. Back in Nova Scotia, reaction has been mixed. Some voters feel blindsided and say he should have consulted them directly or resigned and run again as a liberal. Others, especially moderate conservatives and swing voters, say his move reflects their own discomfort with the National Party's rhetoric and its leaders' confrontational style. Political scientists in the region point out another angle. Floor crossings are rare in Atlantic Canada, and they almost always come with risk. But if d'Entremont wins re-election under Liberal colours someday, it could confirm that parts of rural Nova Scotia are more fluid politically than party labels suggest. Inside the Conservative caucus, there's now a second worry. Is this a one-off act by a disgruntled MP? Or is Chris d'Entremont the first of several? He has hinted that he's not alone, that other Conservatives may be feeling the same pressure between party loyalty and personal conviction. So far, no one but another MP, Matt Genereux, has resigned altogether, adding to the sense of turbulence on the opposition benches. For now, the numbers in the House of Commons tell the story. The Liberals are still a minority, but a stronger one. The Conservatives are still the official opposition, but a slightly smaller and more rattled version of themselves. And one MP from Acadianapolis has turned a personal political calculation into a national test case on leadership, loyalty, and how far a party can move before some of its own decide to get off the bus. Whether voters reward or punish that decision will be decided not on the floor of the House of Commons, but at the ballot box. Until then, Chris d'Entremont's floor crossing remains one of the most consequential single steps taken in Ottawa this year.